Hello and welcome back to America's Forum on Newsmax TV. We're just now getting started with our second hour. It's a pleasure to have you all here with us. I'm John Bachman. I'll be with you for the next 2 hours. All right, taking a look at headlines right now. U.S. retailers facing pressure to ramp up security after cyber attacks on big retailers like Target. The company now ramping up a $100 million program to adopt new, smarter credit cards for use in its stores. The White House also recommends a federal standard for across the board that requires businesses to quickly report thefts of electronic personal information. Security experts are also saying the move is just a drop in the bucket of what big box retailers need to do to protect their customers and themselves. Also, the mortgage industry applications are on the rise as interest rates fall. Applications for mortgages rose as refinancing applications also gained in the last week. The industry group says interest rates for a 30-year fixed mortgage around 4.47% last week. Very low on a historical basis, down from 5 basis points from the prior week. And the Senate has finally passed a long-awaited farm bill with clear winners and losers. $8 billion cut from food stamps over the next decade, $1 trillion in spending added over the next 10 years. Coming up on the show, the bill is being criticized by fiscal conservatives and some folks who haven't always been characterized as fiscal conservatives, including John McCain.
And this farm bill, advertised full of reforms, does nothing. Another bizarre handout in this farm bill that I've been involved in now for many years is the creation of a catfish office. Again, I assure my colleagues, I am not making this up.
We're going to take a look at what's in the farm bill, the pork, the corn, the cotton, and everything else in a special segment coming up. Also, and in Sochi, City in Squalor reports out of Russia now that organizers are scrambling to finish construction on some hotels just 3 days before the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics, the most expensive Winter Olympics in history. There's nowhere to sleep. 3 of the 9 media hotels still haven't been completed. Even those who managed to score lodging are in short supply, which is in short supply. They were granted with less than ideal pictures of their rooms. Some of those pictures getting out. We've seen water that's brown. One reporter said that her hotel water was dangerous to use, and that was coming from the front desk. The front desk told her not to use it because there was something very dangerous in the water, and it could harm her if she put it on her face. So we're going to tune in, see what's going on in Sochi, see if things are getting any better there. Plus, also, the House Intelligence Committee held a hearing Tuesday. We talked about this as well, the worldwide threats affecting the U.S. It also featured prominently in the briefing was Edward Snowden, the NSA contractor turned whistleblower. James Clapper, the director of national intelligence, discussed safety with members of Congress. Here's what he had to say.
And as a consequence, in my view, this nation is less safe and its people less secure. What Snowden has stolen and exposed has gone way, way beyond his professed concerns with so-called domestic surveillance programs. As a result, we've lost critical foreign intelligence collection sources, including some shared with us by valued partners.
So there you go, getting some information from James Clapper. And joining me right now on the phone is Representative Peter King of New York. Congressman King, one of the most respected experts on national security, a member of the House Select Committee on Intelligence. Congressman King, great to have you with us. All right, well, while we wait on trying to get Congressman King with us, I also want to bring in Newsmax senior editor David Patten, who we also have on the phone with us. David, great to have you back with us.
Hey, John, good to be with you.
All right, so we talked to Fred Fleiss, senior analyst for Lignet.com, one of our sister websites, yesterday about James Clapper's testimony on the Hill, and we're starting to get a better picture of the damage that Edward Snowden has done to the nation, to our security apparatus, and to our men and women on the front lines. Fred told us yesterday that there was specific information revealed that shows how Snowden is making it more difficult for the Army and bomb groups to find IEDs out there. Do you think this will start to change the public opinion of those who still view him as a hero in America?
Well, I think that is the objective of a lot of the people that hear Clapper. Ambassador Bolton is another one, who are really trying to articulate to the American people the vast loss of both national security security information, intelligence information that has occurred due to the Snowden leaks. It's really only now becoming apparent. Let me give you one example, if I may. In just the last couple of days, we've learned that one of the items that was supposedly in the vast quantity of information that's still leaking out, will probably continue to leak out for weeks, if not months, was discussion of a quantum type of encryption and decryption, a quantum server to store information and then to process information at extraordinarily high rates. And this is technology that even the most advanced companies in the high-tech field don't have right now. So if, in fact, the NSA had that capability, and if information about that capability went out to our enemies and rivals all around the world, let alone the terrorists who want to destroy America, you can't put a price, you can't estimate what that costs American security. So just in one tiny little aspect, you see the sources and methods of how America collects intelligence is leaked out, and then it's cut off. We no longer have access to it. So when Ambassador Bolton said it is an incalculable degree of damage, it is indeed incalculable.
And it also speaks to the fact, David, that we still don't understand or know fully how much damage that Snowden has done. So for these folks out there who are championing his cause, they might not have the full picture.
John, there was a Brazilian senator today who nominated Edwin Snowden for a Nobel Prize.
I mean, you know, it's important to have this debate, but it's a complicated one. But you know, on one hand, it's hard to understand how people could still defend Snowden so vigorously without getting all this information. Dave, while we have you here, also an issue that the Wall Street Journal reporting today, and as we heard Iran earlier this week talk about these sleeper cells that may or may not already be in the United States. The Wall Street Journal reporting that snipers opened fire on Silicon Valley power stations, knocking out 17 giant transformers. We know that this is an issue. It came up. Joe Lieberman, before he left the Senate, was working on this issue of strengthening our power grid. We know we're vulnerable on this area. What do you make of the report in the Journal today?
Well, it's a little bit odd that it's coming out. This was an attack in April. The details that we have is that it was actually a very sophisticated, coordinated attack. It involved cutting, certain power cables and then getting this sniper attack, which was actually aimed at very large containers of oil. And if you were to ignite one of those, luckily they weren't, but the whole station would go up in flames and would knock out part of the grid. In this particular instance, they were able to reconfigure the power distribution across the grid so that there wasn't an actual outage. But there is speculation that the whole objective here was basically to do a trial, sort of a trial run. Let's see if we do kind of a small-scale attack. We'll learn lessons, the terrorists might say, and then try to apply it on a massive attack across the grid. So certainly with all of the rapid expanse of al-Qaeda and Hezbollah throughout the country, this is something that we're going to have to take a very close look at.
Now, I know you're talking to folks in Capitol Hill almost on a daily basis. We haven't heard much talk about that cybersecurity bill. Has anybody, you think, is going to spark the conversation again?
Well, I would hope so. We're going to have to continually take a look at our vulnerability to domestic terror. That's one of the ways that al-Qaeda and the terrorist groups have evolved. 9/11 basically launched with terrorists from abroad. Now the terrorist threat increasingly seems to be here locally. How do you also defend the country from cyber terror, cyber attacks? Huge problem, huge vulnerability. I think a lot of people don't realize there are literally thousands of attacks that go on every day. So we've got to keep ahead of them. And again, getting back to the Snowden affair, it points out the vulnerability of America's data and the importance of keeping secrets. And when people like Snowden recklessly come in and spew them out to all of our enemies, there has to be a consequence. The talk of an amnesty for somebody who would do something like that is preposterous in my view.
You hinted at that, David. I mean, obviously there's sort of a public relation aspects to what Clapper was saying yesterday on the Hill, kind of setting the case for Clapper here. Timing is not a coincidence, right? We hear talk of some sort of plea bargain a week or so ago, and then we have this hearing. Some of these things that come out.
No, I would agree. I think it's look, the national security infrastructure is pushing back. No one knows better than them, what the damage is. Let's look at the flip side of the coin, though, here for a minute. Clapper doesn't exactly have the reputation for the greatest degree of candor on Capitol Hill.
That's true. We can't forget his comments.
Yeah, and when he says that one of the things we lost was that our foreign allies, our allies abroad, were sharing information with us, and that we've lost that. Well, what he doesn't mention is, they were sharing information with us, but a lot of times they were sharing it involuntarily because we were bugging Angela Merkel's telephone and getting their private conversations, and then using that as intelligence, which has caused a huge, really foreign relations crisis between the United States and Germany. So there is another side to this. We wouldn't know about all of the metadata programs if it weren't for Edward Snowden. So, I understand the view of maybe civil libertarians and people in the media that actually he's done at large a good thing, but I think that's an extremely naive perspective about what is perhaps the worst loss of national security secrets in our country's history.
Yeah, naive is a good word for it, especially at this stage of the game when we continue to learn more about Edward Snowden. You mentioned James Clapper, and we talked a little bit about his infamous testimony. Not that I can remember whatever specifically he said that proved to be inaccurate.
Yeah, that there was no spying domestically that was going on, I believe is what he said.
Yeah, and for those who we know have been on that civil libertarian side, who maybe have not defended Snowden, but have done maybe a little bit less than that, have you, from what you've seen today, as this information has come out, has anybody changed their mind on Snowden? Anybody saying anything surprising today?
Well,
from what you've heard?
I think what we've been seeing is a growing wave of looking again at Snowden in a different light. Perhaps this was brought on by the president's speech about national security and the need to maintain these whatever sort of Patriot Act-derived programs where they're going to go to a FISA court and they're going to get requests for a big data dump from some high-tech company that's going to reveal a lot of patterns of even the behavior of individual Americans, what kind of calls they make, how long the call lasted, and so on and so forth. What we've seen is now what we're seeing is a backlash against that no matter how important it is to reconsider what our priorities are in terms of national security and in terms of gathering intelligence, that we also have to keep in mind the need to keep Americans safe. I mean, after all of this conversation is taking place as we have an Olympics about to occur in Sochi, where there's a tremendous fear about terrorism and terrorism attacks. You have to ask yourself, what if there was a conversation that a terrorist in, say, Beirut had with somebody domestically that related to an attack that was going to take place in Sochi, and we didn't have some of these programs in place?
Yeah, you would hate for anything to happen to Sochi. You of course, would hate to see anyone get hurt in all this, but should something happen and should this somehow be tied back to the release of information from Snowden and happening on Russian soil, Vladimir Putin, who is hosting Snowden, the irony there would be incredibly, it would be incredible, I guess, there's no other word for it.
Well, there are a lot of people, and General Hayden has pointed this out recently, that how in the world do you decide to award an Olympics to a city that's located, very near, just within a few hundred kilometers.
Yeah, we heard this referred to as the first Olympics ever being conducted, in a war zone, basically. The world is holding its breath as the Sochi Olympics gets ready to go. When we come right back, we'll take a closer look at our interview with LinkNet senior analyst Fred Fleitz, what he had to say about Capitol Hill. Plus, we have retired Army Colonel Alan West coming to join us. He'll be talking about how the fact that Snowden has put American troops at risk. Much more when we continue here on America's Forum on Newsmax TV.